This world was unusual. It was inhabited by a great number of people who did not know that among them dwelt invisible to their eyes spiritual beings. However, there were those among them who saw these beings, and as a rule, they were those who were destined to fulfill a divine ritual. With the help of a special ritual, they enslaved the demon, after which, using the power of the demon, they became individuals who performed punishment over the world, which was full of suffering. Such people were eventually called shamans. Street. The boy stood in the middle of the street and looked at the house, which had not even existed yesterday when he passed by. He was surprised to think that it was impossible that the house had been built in one night. The door of the house opened and a girl came out. The boy was immediately struck by the unnaturally deep scar on her face, and he thought that she was probably the owner of the house. In the meantime, the girl had passed him, but suddenly stopped and began to rummage through her pockets, muttering to herself that she had left the thing she was trying to find at home. Then she turned to the guy and addressed him dismissively, calling him chicken. The boy asked her in surprise, trying to make sure she was talking to him. The girl replied that he was yellow like a chicken, and if he had a light. She gestured to the cigarette she already had in her mouth. The guy scornfully replied that no way, he didn't have one, and then showed a yellow ribbon hanging on his sleeve and asked if she had seen it. He added that on this ribbon is written the manual, which denotes a checker. So it is the height of stupidity on the part of a girl to ask a model student like him without thinking about it. Obviously, he is not the right person for her. With that, the guy turned and walked away, telling her to be careful in the future and muttering to himself that she'd ruined his mood. Why he climbed on a motorcycle and put a helmet on his head while continuing to grumble about what kind of people the earth was carrying. He was about to move off when he heard the voice of a girl who addressed him with the same nickname of Chicken. The girl advised him to be careful, because there were many dangerous things around, and he'd better be on his guard while he was driving. The guy turned around and asked her what she was talking about, and then said contemptuously that she'd better not throw her cigarette butts anywhere instead. The girl only grinned at him and replied that he was talking nonsense. Then she slipped her hand into her pocket and pulled out a card and said satisfactorily that she had finally found what she had been looking for and cast the spell Duction, which made fire appear from the card and gave her a light. The girl took a drag and thought that the guy she had just met would be a vessel for God. A short time later. Meanwhile, the guy has already reached the university and caught the son of the deputy, who told him that the girl he met, according to his father, is a famous shaman, and she had really recently moved to the city. The guy queried whether the girl's name was really Wariahan and was soon curiously browsing the page on the YouTube query of the same name. He noticed, after looking up the girl's information, that her name looked like an alias. The deputy's son replied that there are rumors that she sees spirits. She's also known for her pilgrimages to Holy Land, and she is also visited by many celebrities. Meanwhile, the guy opened one of Wariahan's videos in which she was taking apart a member of the Korean parliament, scornfully saying that you can't look at him without tears, and besides he is a pervert. The guy pronounced that at first glance it seems that such a video is made just for the sake of views, to which the deputy's son objected that it really works, because the person she targets is punished the very next day, and this has happened to more than 2 or 3 people. The guy said with admiration that it was amazing. That's what the information power of the son of the deputy of the city means, and he thanked him from the bottom of his heart, saying that he really helped him a lot. At that, the guy himself was sitting on top of 2 guys he had apparently defeated in a recent fight. The deputy's son asked if he could put his hands down then, well, the guy wouldn't let him. Suddenly, there was the sound of voices and footsteps approaching. The guy, whose name was Kim Tae-sung, said angrily that the worms had come again. Meanwhile, the unfriendly guys were really getting around him, calling him an asshole and asking him if he'd touched Kyung-sik again. The question was rhetorical, but Tae-sung snorted that all they knew how to do was run around. So they decided to do away with him today, and the deputy's son shouted from behind Tae-sung's back that yes, let them do away with him. With the words that then from now on it's punishment time, the boys rushed into the attack. Tae-sung dealt tangible blows to his enemies while chanting that their wish would soon come true. The guys were perplexed and asked what other wish, to which Tae-sung replied that it seemed that these guys who had jumped on him were his wish. Then Tae-sung struck a blow aimed at the chin and knocked them down, which surprised the son of the deputy, who thought that such an action violated all the laws of physics. Tae-sung realized that the guys had smashed the screen of his phone and grabbed one of his enemies by the chest, asking him what they had done with his phone. He replied that he had thrown it himself. And while Tae-sung was preoccupied with the damage to his phone, one of the guys took advantage of it and brought a bat over his head with the phrase "get the freak." He started to lower the bat, but Tae-sung suddenly dodged the blow and turned around and struck his opponent. So the guy got rid of all his enemies and turned his back to all the injured junior high school students, telling them that they could leave because he had already collected all their phones, money, and other items. They could rest assured that Taeson would not ignore these bastards. With those words, he handed the boys a bag of stuff. The juniors thanked Taeson heartily, and here stated that as the pound leading the activity he would like to receive 10% from them as a commission. The juniors laughed, calling him a bug, and promised to send him a fee. To this Taeson responded with ironic gratitude, to pronounce that he would never forget their support and would be with them until the day his committee was gone. The younger students quietly said they'd rather he disappeared, and the deputy's son called out to him as he continued to sit with his hands in the air. But Taeson didn't hear anyone. His thoughts were occupied with this shaman named Nuna. He looked at the screen of the phone with her image and hoped that in the future he wouldn't have anything to do with this girl. Suddenly, another girl appeared before his eyes, addressing him by the name Taeson and telling him not to cry. Taeson scratched the back of his head and thought that his memory was under attack when he thought about it for a long time. Then he waved it all off, thought that whatever, he'd better go clean up the neighborhood, and ran down the road ahead. Two people, a guy and a girl in strange clothes, were watching Taeson and talking to each other, saying that Taeson was definitely the guy they needed. He was a vessel. He reacted to the attack even from the blind spot, so his senses are high because he's a vessel, the girl said, to which the guy objected that she couldn't be absolutely sure of it. And the girl replied that it didn't matter whether he was right or wrong, now they would check it out. She pulled out a fire card and summoned a demon cat named Mokwi, whom she ordered to move forward, for the day of the prophecy was near, and the cat must prevent it no matter what, even if he has to kill that Taeson guy to do it. High school. A high school student rode his motorcycle up to the schoolyard and parked, and noticed a real cool motorcycle under the brand name KOTV 921 not far from him. He took off his helmet and looked at the motorcycle, saying admiringly that he didn't know whose it was, but it was worth a lot of money. And then he wondered why he was standing in front of the high school. Looking closely at the bike, the attentive high school student noticed a sticker with Taeson's picture on it that read, "This handsome man is my master. If you touch me, you die." After reading this, the high school student couldn't believe his eyes that a student could ride such a motorcycle. Maybe it's some kind of joke, he thought. And then he wondered how that rich bastard could ride it without fear and not think that motorcycles could be dangerous. He didn't notice the demon coming up behind him. So, when he was possessed by it, it was a complete surprise to the guy, and a scream burst out of his chest. A bird sitting on the roof of the house was watching this action, and when it closed its eyes and opened them again, the bird turned into a shamaness who had already moved into her house and said with satisfaction that it seemed to have begun. Nuna was satisfied with this development and headed inside the house on her way, summoning the demon Damaru. School. Taeson was walking along the schoolyard and rejoicing at the junior high students' catch today. He didn't notice the slanted glances and unpleasant words about him from the students behind his back. He had managed to collect a lot today, and he considered that a good sign. He looked at his account through the mobile app and calculated that 2 part-time jobs this month would be enough, even enough for the monthly rent and living expenses. He was very happy as he was able to finally purchase his dream flex motorcycle. This KOTV 921 he happened to see his last birthday and immediately stole his heart in an instant. So Taeson decided that he lives once and rushed to the owner of the motorcycle to ask him to sell it to him on a 12-month installment plan. At first, the owner balked, saying he was not yet of age and was seeing him for the first time. But the guy was not going to give up, so he began to urgently pay for everything he could: cash, gold, installation. And finally, after a year, the day came when his labor paid off and he acquired his dream. Taeson walked over to where he had left the bike and stunned, was completely wrecked. Taeson nearly lost his senses and yelled in a voice that wasn't his own, "Who did this?" Everyone around him sympathized and pointed to a guy in a hoodie and helmet squatting nearby. Taeson turned to him and yelled at him to see if he wanted to take the pot off his head. But the boy didn't seem to pay any attention and suddenly started to run away. Taeson shouted where he was going and rushed after him. They ran and Taeson yelled that he was going to get him for doing that to his bike. There was one strange thing about the boys running on all fours, which soon puzzled Taeson, and he thought for a moment that he was running into a trap. But he dismissed the thought, determined to do whatever it took to get rid of the man who had ruined a year's work. The fleeing man stumbled and his helmet fell off his head. Taeson stopped and demanded to see him and explain why he had ruined his motorcycle. The boy turned to him and Taeson saw that he had a face like a cat's, and the discovery really surprised the high schooler. For a moment, Taeson thought he had been wounded, blood dripping down his torn shirt. He groped himself quickly, but everything was intact and there was no wound, despite his previous sensation. However, everything inside him was literally screaming danger, and as confirmation the cat guy began to attack him with a howl. Tayson prepared to fend off the blow and hit back, but the only thing he had time for was to back away from the blow, and the cat guy hit the wall with his fist. Suddenly, Tayson heard Nuna's voice behind him, saying cheerfully that she hadn't expected to see him alive. Though she was worried about him, he was holding up better than she thought. Tayson turned around and saw the shamaness, who was literally floating in the air, which he asked her in amazement as to how she was able to float in the air. To this, Nuna only smiled and said that it seems like he can't see ghosts, because she's actually sitting on Kong Chun's monster, which she immediately asked her to put down. And after that she concluded that he also can't see the ghost cat on that guy who attacked him. Tayson asked her what she was talking about, but the shaman interrupted him and ordered him to turn around. He did so, and she explained that the man he was fighting was possessed by a ghost demon, and at the moment he is borrowing the ghost's power. He is able to manifest powers that normal people can't see. Tayson was angry again and lunged at his opponent with a shout, but the shamaness stopped him, stating that he couldn't catch this guy. Then Tayson asked her why she had come if she was only trying to be cool and not helping. Nuna laughed and said it was fun to watch the fight from the sidelines. Tetsun noted that he was no match for him, and he was almost at the end of his rope, and Nuna thought that if he were a normal person, he would have died long ago. It seems that Tayson is a vessel of a different level. He doesn't see ghosts, but he senses danger on an instinctive level and reflexively avoids the attacks of an invisible enemy. But watching their fight, Nuna realized that the guy was still pretty weak and barely had time to turn around, for the human body had limits. As if in confirmation, Tayson was wounded. Nuna was glad that he was finally hurt, even though he had been holding on for quite some time. Tayson thought today was a strange day. After he'd met the shaman, his life had gone downhill. He just wanted to live his life adrift, but he couldn't even avenge his motorcycle. As soon as Daesung thought that, the thought struck him that he couldn't die without avenging the motorcycle. After all, 5 million won and a year of labor couldn't go to waste. The thought gave him so much strength that he was ready to fight again, but Daesung couldn't just die without finding out why his motorcycle was broken. Nuna was surprised and said that it looked like she was wrong and he had avoided being hit in the vital points and had survived. She took out the fire talismans of Duction, the Lion of Greatness, and summoned him to breathe life into Tayson's body. The lion appeared and jumped on the guy's head, and Tayson screamed in pain and from being hot. The boy didn't know what was going on at all. Looking at Tayson's thrashing, Nuna said that Duction was the strongest of all the ghosts, but whether he would be able to use his power, that was the question. At this time, the cat boy prepared himself and struck Tayson, tearing his yellow bandage and causing damage. The cat was overjoyed at his success, but his joy was short-lived as he heard Tayson's voice change and then saw his transformation. Soon he received a tangible blow back, and Tayson said that it was time for him to take the initiative. Nuna rejoiced and said that finally Duction's power had finally manifested. Now Tayson was a skilled genius who was an exceptionally talented person. Now Tayson had to see that his opponent was possessed by the spirit cat. The shamaness advised him to get rid of his rival with the help of his power, but suddenly she was almost attacked by Tayson herself, dodging it at the last moment. She realized that for him she was also an object of pursuit. Nuna realized that it would be difficult for Tayson to fully accept Dushin at once. He was not fully possessed yet. The ghost had only just become possessed. He was in a trance, and if he didn't wake up unconsciously, he wouldn't be able to take over completely. The cat also noticed that the ghost hadn't had time to fully consume his rival, but his mistress, who had possessed the cat's ghost, ordered him to end it and attack both Tayson and Nuna at once. Then the attacker used the cat technique and bound Tayson with a mech attack. The shaman realized that while here in a trance his reflexes weren't working and he couldn't even avoid such a lame attack. While Nuna was distracted by Tayson, the cat tried to attack her, but she quickly repelled his attack, yelling how dare he attack her. The ghost cat manager realized that nothing was working, but that was okay with her. Meanwhile, Tayson demanded to untie him so that he could catch the cat, but the cat wasted no time in the meantime and launched another cat attack on Tayson, but he withstood it steadfastly. The mistress then decided to use a cat attack called Obnoxious Fur. Nuna watched restlessly and thought that this time the cat might do well. Since Tayson didn't have any signs of unconsciousness waking up, it's because he has no motivation to wake up. But Nuna didn't have time to look for a motive, so she decided to remind him about the 5 million won he spent on the motorcycle. It really worked. Taesung howled and demanded his money back, adding that he would stand until the end. The cat yelled for him to die and gave him another blow, and Nuna yelled to revive the guy. Let's get $5 million. Tayson heard this and struggled, trying to break the fur ties. Soon he actually succeeded and struck the cat, knocking it to the ground. Nuna watched the cat's defeat with pleasure and said that the guy was really simple in terms of motivation, though really cool. And Tayson stood over his defeated opponent and declared that he was doomed to be a vessel in the future. Tayson was genuinely happy that he had defeated the cocky kitty. He really didn't understand why his head was on fire, but he didn't really care much about that. Nuna noted with satisfaction that the barrier had been overcome and everything was going according to plan. Taesung turned to her and said that he had beaten the cat and where was his promised 10 million won. Nuna replied that instead of being surprised by the situation, she was thinking about money and told the guy that she wouldn't give it to him. Taesung was surprised and asked why she changed her mind, because she had promised him 10 million won, and he might kill her for cheating on him. To this Nuna objected that she always kept her promises. She wanted to give them to him, but on condition that he did his job well. With these words she reached out and caught the cat. Showing it to the boy, the shamaness said that if he could catch a living man as well. Tetsun got angry and shouted at her not to make him a dog. Nuna said that shouting would get him nowhere and she was fed up with it, so she told him to go to sleep. Tetsun fell to the ground and Nuna realized that she had wasted her time on him. Now she decided to tackle the sassy shaman children she could sense from miles away. Nuna tore up the shaman's cat and her friend asked the owner of the animal if she was all right. The woman replied that she would kill her for sure, but her friend worriedly asked her to keep her voice down. But he soon realized that their presence had been noticed and they now had to defend the main lantern as best they could. And since everything has to go perfectly, elders sent them off to get ready. He was very excited that 8 years later they would finally play bloodshed. Remembering, a little boy was walking down the street and other children were making fun of him. They called him a beggar, said that he stank, and asked him that he had only a mother. The boy didn't answer anything, but they didn't need to, because everyone already called the boy's mother a shaman. The boy came home crying and asked his mom, who immediately rushed to him asking why he was crying, what a single mom was. His mother thought for a moment and replied to her son, calling him Tayson, that single mom is short for the phrase mom who has everything in the world. Tayson came to love this explanation, and his mother stroked his head and told him to stop crying. Tayson promised he wouldn't cry, though in truth he knew his mother was deceiving him and always smiled in front of him, pretending everything was fine. And the mother took out the talisman and said that when she sold them they would become very rich. The boy asked her to move into an apartment, and the mother said that was not a bad idea. In fact, Tayson could see that it was difficult for his mother, and often the landlord came and demanded the rent, which they kept putting off. Mother always apologized and asked for a little more time to pay it all at once. After the landlord left, she was happy that she was able to get them another month's grace period. Tayson saw that his parents were hiding their true feelings from him. He understood that it was okay to be poor, it was okay to cheat, and it was okay to be a shaman. The most important thing for the boy was that his mother was always there for him. One day Tayson came home and called for his mother, but instead of her he saw a letter lying on the table. When he unfolded it, he read the letter and saw that his mother had run away to find freedom. She wrote that she had no money left. She hoped she had raised him well enough for him to take care of himself. She has to save her life, so she runs away, but Tayson can also live the life she wants, and if they are meant to, they will meet again. Tayson wondered if his mother was having such a hard time that she didn't have any money left to raise him. But even if she did, would she be able to live peacefully without him? He decided that his mother had left him to live a wonderful life without him and now he should cut her out of his life too. He decided that now he could make a lot of money and live his life as well, and maybe even better than his mom. Awakening. Tayson opened his eyes and saw Nuna beside him. The shamaness noticed that he was awake and asked him what was so sad that he was crying. Tayson didn't answer anything. He raised himself on the bed and asked what kind of house it was. Nuna answered that it was her house. Tayson smelled a familiar odor, as if from a dream. By the way, the dream he'd had, it had been a long time ago. Tayson looked around and saw the armor he had seen when he came home as a kid. Armor was the various tools used by shamans to perform rituals. The boy realized that he even missed it a little bit. Then Tayson saw a guy bolted to the wall and asked who it was. It looked like it had no soul. Nuna confirmed that there is no soul there, but there is a living body point. Then the guy asked that if there is no soul in the body, isn't it the same as a corpse? The shamaness replied that it was her boyfriend's thing. Tayson asked that is she really dating a corpse? What the hell is that? The boyfriend asked. The shamaness laughed and said that if he was really curious about who she was, then she would tell him. The name of her body is Warionia, the reincarnation of the maiden of the heavenly King Margot, the best shaman. Also, having come here to fulfill the prophecy according to this prophecy, God will be born in the body of an 18-year-old boy who has a main lantern, and the boy from this prophecy who has a main lantern is him. The shamaness pointed directly at Tayson. Tayson was perplexed and asked what the main light meant. Nuna replied that she would tell him about the moment when someone is hit by a bus. In that situation, instant death follows, with many different thoughts running through the person's mind and memories of life pop up one after another. It is like a signal that is sent to a person when he is facing death. In other words, it's like the phrase, "Death flew before my eyes." This lantern does exist. It sends a danger signal to the owner when he is facing premature death, allowing him to avoid it. This lantern is one of the divine devices created by the gods that existed before humans. And this lantern is in Tayson, the shamaness explained. She asked that he had had this feeling many times before, that something suddenly happens when he's in danger. It's called intuition. Also the ability to dodge. It was all the basic lantern that warned him of danger. Tayson said it couldn't be. How could something like that be in his body, he wondered. And Nuna pronounced that he was the protagonist of the prophecy with the main lantern. God has risen. Tayson asked if God was in him. Nuna confirmed this once again and said that he must accept it, for he is the king of all demons and creatures, the one who pacifies everything. Tayson replied that he didn't really care. He was only interested in where his 10 million won was. He grabbed the shaman's breasts and pushed her against the wall. Nuna smiled and asked why he wanted to flirt with her so badly, and right next to her boyfriend. Tayson replied that she shouldn't talk nonsense, but give him his money and they would part ways. The shaman only shook her head and said sadly that people really addicted to money are creatures. And then she kicked him in the stomach and told him to go fuck himself. As Tayson came to his senses, Nuna began to explain to him that the main lantern would give him great power equal to that of the god of death. But right now his lantern's abilities were too weak. The main lantern causes the master's soul to become obsessed with life. However, in his case, he seems to have an obsession with money, and if he has a lot of money, he won't feel safe and his existence will become meaningless. The proof of this is in his face. After all, he just couldn't dodge her fist. In addition, there are personalities who didn't like his existence, such as that cat. They would pursue him with the purpose of destroying him. So then how could he be so caring while being so weak? He should finally realize that he is a vessel of God. The shaman finished her fiery speech. Tayson only replied that he wasn't that interested in a story involving gods and souls because it didn't feel real. And his reality at the moment was this. He owned a broken motorcycle. Tomorrow was his birthday. Tomorrow he was supposed to be the official owner of this motorcycle. He had been dreaming about it and walking towards this goal since last year. But now his blood and sweat spilled over the past year was in vain, and he had decided that he would never let this happen again. And yes, he wasn't interested in what she was offering him, and there was nothing she could do about it. Suddenly, Tayson began to smell something very pleasant that he had never smelled before. Nuna grinned and said that it was a pity he felt that way, because she was going to give him a present. She pulled out a suitcase full of money and asked him how he liked it. Tayson's brain literally boiled up. He automatically started counting so much money and realized that there was 1 billion won in the suitcase. Nuna said that she had won the money the other day and now she hoped that he was interested in what she was offering him. Taesung stared at the money like a mesmerized man and reached for it, but the shamaness abruptly slammed the suitcase in front of him without letting him touch the bills and said that's enough for now. Tomorrow was his birthday, the day of the prophecy, and if it went well, she would give him all the money as a birthday present. Taesun grudgingly wondered if she was mocking him. If he lives through tomorrow, she will give him that money. He as a fool should believe her words. He is sure she is thinking of deceiving him again. After all, for one thing, he doesn't believe shamans. And then the guy laughed and said that that's where the past Kim Taesung would have acted. But now he's God Kim Taesung who promises to live tomorrow. Nuna laughed and asked him contentedly that since he had become obedient, he would now listen to his sister. Taesun replied that of course he was at her service and he was looking forward to tomorrow. Nuna was satisfied thinking that now he is in her. It has been 8 years and now she must succeed. She will surely make this boy a great god, and after that, she will be able to use the power of God to take revenge. Nuna said the deal was done and grabbed the guy by his shirt and pulled him to her with words to bow down. She had something for him. She started to put the glasses on him and Taesun stood obediently and didn't hinder it. University. Taesun walked across the schoolyard, gathering surprised looks on his face. The students were whispering among themselves, wondering what was new and if his balls had gotten behind the rollers. Taesun was walking without looking at anyone, and yet he was wearing sunglasses. The teacher stopped him and demanded that he explain why he was wearing sunglasses. The boy replied that he had laser vision correction. But the teacher objected that his vision was almost perfect, and the student replied that he wanted to see even better than before. The teacher then roared that this was a totally lame joke. Tayson looked at the teacher and saw a ghost behind his back, surprised that he could see him. And the guy didn't take long and struck the ghost, confirming that he could indeed see him. The ghost started to run away. Everyone around him was surprised that he raised his hand at the teacher, and the teacher asked how he dared to do that. Tayson himself was pleased that he could even see ghosts now. That ghost didn't look so bad, Tayson thought. Then at Nuna's house, when she put on his glasses, he saw in them some huge creature with a fiery head. The shamaness explained to him that it was the one who had entered his body, Duction. Tayson said that he doesn't understand who this guy is and why his whole head is on fire. He looks like an ugly dog. And Nuna said that these glasses not only allow him to see ghosts, but he can also touch them and communicate with them. Nuna then began to explain that the enemy would try to attack him with a ghost like last time, as the attack in a tribute state looks quite terrifying, so it would be better if he wore spiritual goggles to catch the enemy and most importantly survive. The prophecy must be fulfilled on March 1st of the lunar calendar, at the time when the sun is hottest. That time will come breakfast at noon, the shamaness finished explaining. So now that he was at the university, Taesung was watching the students carefully, because he knew that there would probably be one among them who would want to kill him because he was possessed by a demon. After about 3 hours, Taesung sat in the classroom pleased with himself since nothing had happened and time had flown by pretty fast and he had a chance to get his billion won. Then Taeson looked outside the window and saw a guy walking down the street with some huge coiled pipe behind him. After a while, the guy got the order to release what he had behind his back and started to untie the rope. People around were watching in amazement. Even the teacher approached the guy and asked what he was doing. Point on the schedule today was not expecting outside personnel. The teacher continued and asked if he had permission from the school committee. If he did not have permission, he demanded to leave the area. No sooner had the teacher finished than the monster that had escaped swallowed him. Everyone around him gasped in surprise, unable to believe their eyes. Monster meanwhile had completely eaten the teacher and said he was satisfied with his lunch. The monster then shouted to everyone else to follow the general's orders. Taeson, who was standing there watching, realized that all these guys were shamans, but didn't understand why they were attacking in such a way. Taeson felt his arm being gnawed on and saw that he was being attacked by a small monster and threw it off his arm in disgust. He looked around him and saw that he was surrounded by ghosts, who were repeating like zombies the phrase, "Follow the general's orders." Taeson realized he was in deep shit. Earlier, at the shamaness house, Nuna handed Taeson the amulets. He took them and asked what it was. He was far from understanding all their stuff. The girl explained to him that it was a sealed block. It could hold spirits. Duction will be in this amulet. If he uses it, it can possess a spirit. He and Lena would be sure to use it if he was attacked. To which the guy replied that he wouldn't want some man to enter his body. He asked the girl if she couldn't just protect him. Nuna said that she had thought about it, but she had to protect her boyfriend. Tessin asked perplexed that she had to protect a dead body. Nuna explained that it was a celestial body that any spirit could enter. It was almost a god before Taeson came along. Now the shamans are after not only Taeson but this body as well. So it would be difficult for her to protect both of them at the same time. Taeson waved his hand and said that they'd better get to their plan. He said that as far as he was concerned, he just needed to get through tomorrow. Nuna confirmed that and then Taeson stated that she should remember something too. He hates tenants more than anything else in the world. If she doesn't keep her promise, he will do everything he can to ruin her plan. Nuna waved her hands and told him that since he was still angry about the past, she was willing to give him 10 million won in advance. Taesong was incredibly happy about the money, and Nuna told him to remember that the money wasn't important to her. She just wanted everything to go according to plan. Taeson laughed and replied that she could care less. She just didn't know yet what he could be like for the money. University. Taeson watched the classmates looming over him and realized there were too many of them. Almost all of his classmates were possessed. Taeson ran into the corridor of the school and there he saw the same picture as outside. Everyone was obsessively repeating that they had to follow the general's order. The boy thought that probably all the students of the school were in such a state. Then he decided to use his Duction talisman and when she activated it, courage overwhelmed him. Taesong remembered the 1 billion won waiting for him and so he was ready to fight everyone to the end. Taeson began to run among the zombies, slaying them one by one with all sorts of techniques. But it was not without its counter-attacks. The guy who released the monster was watching all this and had to admit that he was pretty good at fighting. But his monster said that it was no surprise, because it was Duction. To the guy's objection that he wasn't doing in spirit at all, Tayson is just controlling his sanity while being possessed by the spirit at the same time. In such a state, the destructive power of the main lantern is obscured. He probably won't be able to reach his full potential. Thus this guy will be difficult to curb. They were all weaker than the cat, Tetsun thought, but there were too many of them, so it would be a long time before they were done. If this kept up, it would be hard to finish this by 12 o'clock. The phone rang and the guy pulled out his earpiece to answer it. It turned out to be Nuna, who had called because she was worried, wanting to know how he was doing. But as long as he was okay, there was no problem. Tess encountered that there was a problem, and there wasn't just one person obsessed, but hundreds. Changsun had turned all the students against him. Nuna asked if this was the same Changsun who was the peace general. Taesun replied that he didn't know, probably yes. Nuna then proceeded to explain to him that this general isn't that dangerous. He has 3 faces, each with different abilities. He has to break the face that controls the students to dispel the enchantments, but to do that he has to figure out which face. The girl said that the courier had arrived and she couldn't talk anymore, so he would have to deal with it himself. Tayson wanted to hold her back, but there was a short beeping sound and he was once again alone with the monster. Without a moment's thought, Tayson used his powerful speed to jump out and found himself in front of the general. He decided to smash 3 faces at once and not bother. The monster's owner, a clown, looked at him condescendingly and asked where this little thing like Tayson had a mommy. Tetsun replied that such banter had gone out of fashion long ago, and realized that he was quite strong. They were about to attack, but Changsun interrupted them. He ordered them to stop and said that the child of the prophecy was doing well, but that he must have realized that it was useless to continue the fight and that it was better to give up or one of the students would be in trouble. Taesun saw one of the students practically fall out of the window, holding onto the wall with only one hand, and Changsun added that the fate of this person depends only on him and he hopes that he will make the right choice. He's a leader. Tetsun said he didn't care if he fell or not, as long as he didn't do it. And no one had ever died from a fall from such a height. Before he could say anything, the kid took off, but Taesun caught him in time. Changsun admired this and said that he was faster than expected and as a leader anyway, he must have been worried about the kid. Tayson guffaws that it was just a wallet falling there, so he caught it. Doesn't think he sees right through it, but he's wrong. This story in general, who is very fond of money. Changsun says that he seems to be crazy, but it's kind of interesting. Also, it looks like his strength is running out, so now he'll realize how weak he is and if he doesn't want more bloodshed, he advises him to give up soon. Tayson shouted that he was talking utter nonsense and don't even get his hopes up that he would give up. Tayson lunged at the clown monster, but almost immediately found himself on the ground. And the monster stated that he was stupid because his mind was taken over by a demon, also, the same as his body. That's why he still couldn't realize the situation, but he would kindly explain everything to him. The monster took off his clown mask and declared that Tayson's punishment would catch up with him soon. He would be spread out point he could resist and fixate all he wanted. By doing so he was only giving him pleasure and he hoped he would die. Nuna's house. In fact, when the shamaness was on the phone with Tayson explaining about Changsun, she heard a lot of evil spirits breaking into her house. That's why she quickly said goodbye to the guy, referring to the arrival of the courier. And just in time she dropped the bell, because the next moment her door was blown open. Nuna was angry and shouted how dare they thoughtlessly blow up what they wanted. The 3-faced wife of the general appeared in front of her with the evil spirits and said that she was so happy to see Nuna that she wanted to hug her, but it seemed that she was not happy to see her at all. It had been 8 years, and she didn't miss her at all, the creature said sadly. Nuna replied that since she didn't remember the past anymore, she shouldn't pretend to be friendly and better get out of here. The general's wife asked what she was supposed to remember and pretended to think about it, then stated that she had been told to kill the shamaness. If she wanted, the wife could make her servant. Then the wife shouted the word order and all sorts of ghosts started pulling up to her from all sides. Then the general's wife said she remembered. Probably Nuna had meant Changsun. After all, the general had taken out the humans and she could control the ghosts. Her front face controls the left side command, and after the comma is the third face, the right side absorbing powers, which is controlled by demons. Then the general's wife said that since she remembered everything, she should remember how she decorated Nuna's face. Nuna shuddered with anger and hissed that she too should remember how she had skinned her for 4 whole years. The wife replied that she naturally remembered it. How could she forget it? She probably enjoyed seeing her like that and remembered how nice she had been to her 8 years ago by inflicting a similar mutilation on her face. The general's wife then demanded to surrender and let her take the heavenly body, because Chan's son had given her the power of hundreds of demons. She is no longer as weak as she was 8 years ago, and now the shamaness will see that. The chief of the demons appeared in front of Nuna and shouted for her to die. But Nuna only laughed and asked that had she forgotten who she was, for her body was the reincarnation of Mago, the maiden of the heavenly king, the magnificent Isis. University. Meanwhile, the monster in the clown mask was in full command and demanded that the spells over the humans be minimized so that they would regain the power needed to use the third person. Chan's son satisfyingly said that was fine and asked if he could see the masking skills of the great clown. But the clown didn't have time to answer, because Tayson pounced on them shouting that he wouldn't let them stand there and do what they wanted. And the demon yelled at the clown that maybe he would open his mouth to get the cure. Come on, let him try. The clown yelled at him to shut his filthy mouth and pulled out his sword asking how he could have such a thing. Tayson just waved it off and said that it was let him try to dodge his fiery blows. The clown used a sand kick, but it was weak and he told the boy not to get too comfortable. Tayson heard Nuna shouting behind him, urging him to stop. He turned around and saw the shaman. The boy asked in surprise why she was here, and when he turned back, he saw that the clown had left. And Nuna answered that she had come here to help him. But Tayson didn't listen to her. He was trying to find someone. Nuna asked him who he was looking for and the guy said the clown in the mask. That's when Nuna reincarnated as a clown and asked if that's what he was looking for. Then laughed and said one step done. His magic is based on reincarnating into another person, so Tayson shouldn't be proud to have a basic land. He then demonstrated step 2 of Ogwand, a clown ability that allowed him to spread out and made him very funny. Tayson asked if he thought 5-on-1 was a little unfair. The clown replied that he was talking too much and prepared to attack. But then suddenly, as he was about to strike, he saw in front of him, not the clown, a complete stranger, who asked him not to hit her. Tayson immediately stopped and the girl turned into a clown and laughed again at the fact that he believed him again. When Tayson recovered from the blow, he noticed the guy he had saved from falling from the heights, and thinking that the clown was trying to trick him again, he struck him. But the guy screamed in pain and Tayson realized that he had really hit his friend. The clown laughed at him again and called him a fool. Tetsun groaned in pain and was immediately twisted by the clown's subjects. He laughed and asked where his arrogance had gotten him, asking if he was a vessel for God. Then he pretended to regret it and said that he didn't seem to know anything. So, he decided to take it upon himself to tell him something. Wariahan, that girl, she's just using him. She only needs his power to become a god. She's using that power to kill shamans, and the reason for that is to break the bond. So she wants to create a chaotic world of evil. After dumping this on the guy's head, the clown asked if he now understands the whole situation and that he better not waste his strength for nothing and just give up. Besides, if he listened, he would live. But Tayson demanded that the clown be silenced and said that he had already tried to kill him several times. But what now? Does he really want to forcefully change his mind and let him go, while explaining to him who is bad and who is good? The clown, seeing Tayson's behavior, was puzzled as to where he got so much strength, how such a thing was possible. And Tayson continued talking and said that even those who attacked the students were just as evil in his eyes. With these words, he jumped up from his seat and tried to rip the clown's mask off, but then he got ready to hit him back. But the guy came back quite easily and continued to talk. He said that if they were both bad, he would be with the one who gave the money. Tayson didn't understand what was happening, but he felt the strength spill over again. And the clown was puzzled by what had happened to his eyes. They had somehow changed and the energy was calmer than before. Maybe Tayson just adapted during the fight, the clown thought, and decided that the victory would still be his. With the words that this guy would not interfere with their plan, the great clown rushed to attack, but was thrown back by a powerful blow. And Tayson yelled at him to clench his teeth and jumped right at him. He was going to smear his face, but it turned out he was lunging at the fake. So without thinking long, he started attacking all the clowns that surrounded him, thus exterminating all 4 clowns and leaving only one real one. So he stood in front of the real clown and said that now that none of his friends were left, they could fight the old-fashioned way. Kanshin, the process of enlightenment or Confucianism, is a phenomenon often referred to as trance, in which the human body becomes possessed by spirit. Shamans borrow the power of the spirit through this state. But not everyone can use Kanshin. After all, to use it, a person must see spiritual beings. Such people are 1 in 10,000. So when a demon is possessed by a mere man, the latter's reasoning becomes cloudy and the only thing that can prevent it is a spiritual entity. But this is not the main condition. Also, you need to be able to control the demonic essence, and to do this requires long training. Some people need a year to do this, but there are cases when it takes a lifetime. After all, to use the power of the demon is not easy. The clown knew about Kanshin and didn't understand how Tayson, not having the ability to see ghosts, was able to accomplish this, and even now, during the battle, he was getting stronger and stronger. If he was just a vessel for God, then it was impossible for someone like him. Tayson asked the clown why he wasn't attacking. Was he really scared of his punches? But the clown suddenly asked him why such power. He is on the side of the Warian girl. How can he realize he's going down the wrong road? He better listen to. Tayson replied that some time ago the clown had annoyed him very much. Having said that, he took out money and asked the clown what it was. The clown replied that it was money. Tayson confirmed and asked what other wrong way he was talking about. When he was 10 years old, he was abandoned by his parents, and the clown now tells him that he made the wrong choice. It was then that he chose his own path, and in the process only money became his friend. His plan now is to get 1 million friends, so the clown can continue to keep noodling him, but in the end he will still choose his money. The clown laughed and said, does he really think the girl will give him that kind of money? Then he is really very stupid, so he will kill her. Tayson countered that if he did as she said, he would get 1 billion. His inclinations no longer listened to him, rushed to the attack with the agility of the ground. So the fight resumed. Chon-sun watched this and realized that the reconciliation had turned into a fight again, but either way, she didn't want to let Tayson live and was going to take his soul. Meanwhile, Tayson felt himself growing stronger and stronger. He even wondered what would happen when God awakened. But Chon-sun argued that Tayson's power would already be his before that moment came. Nuna's house. Nuna apologized to the general's wife for hurting her, but she was lying on the floor trying to get away from the blow and said that this year she had become incomparably stronger than she had been 8 years ago, and it shouldn't be like this. After all, she had worked so hard to get stronger, but she was hit by the fact that she was here alone by her own volition. So, she realizes that she is now dying and asks the shamaness to take her soul and take her revenge. It was Chanson's will to do so. Nuna replied that it didn't matter now. University. Chon-sun suddenly shouted that something was happening and cried. Taesong and the clown looked at each other in surprise, not understanding why he was crying. All of his clones came back to the clown and demanded that he use the lightness of the ground to attack. Taeson just laughed and said it wouldn't work anymore. They could try it, though, and he could get rid of all 5 of them at once. One of the clowns disappeared and Taeson began to look for him. Not finding him, he thought he had turned into sand. But suddenly he appeared behind him and with the skill of a great clown made an irresistible blow high, throwing Taeson upwards. He then proceeded to use such a strike with each of his clones, for a total of 5 irresistible strikes. Satisfied with himself, he said he was done. And Taeson shouted to him not to relax. He was purposely letting him hit him to use the power of demonic fire. The clown said okay, now he thinks the one is worthy to be a vessel for God, and then he suggests we have some real fun. Gathering the 3 main clowns, he summoned the power of agility of the land great clown Salpan, a game in which the clown touches the ground with both hands and demonstrates his skills. They say this game was called Salpan because of the meaning of the word. If you do well, you survive. If not, you die. So the clown needed to do the right thing to stay alive, otherwise, he would just die. The clown laughed and said he would show Taeson his fate. At that, he revealed and sent him into the fiery lava. Memories from childhood. Little Taeson was sleeping in his crib when suddenly he opened his eyes and saw his mother sneaking around the room. The boy got up and asked what his mother was doing there. The woman shuddered and turned to him with a smile and asked why he was awake and added that it was okay, let him sleep on. But the boy did not calm down and asked his mother if she had any pain. The mother replied that no, she had just seen a spirit. It happens, he could take it easy and go to bed. Tomorrow everything will be fine, his mother added, and the next day she was gone. Taeson repeated to himself that his mother, who had abandoned him, and the bastards who had abused him because we were sure it was an insignificant world, didn't need any of that. He could live a wonderful life on his own. University. Therefore, Taeson never looks back, and he wasn't about to do so now as he hovered above the fiery lava. The clown shouted that it was over. No matter how hard he tried, he would eventually die. Thus, the vessel for God would disappear. Suddenly he heard Taeson's voice behind him, telling him that he was the only one who would die today. The clown turned around in surprise, not understanding how it had happened. And Taeson did get out of the lava, and all the clowns asked him what he was doing all this even after finding out the whole truth. Taeson replied that it didn't matter how things really were, it didn't matter to him at all. And the clown laughed evilly and said that he wasn't going to give up so easily. Now he was going to show off his strongest magic, namely the third ability of the main clown. But he was suddenly interrupted by Chang's son, who ordered him to stop as they had little time left. He demanded the clown step back to deal with him himself. With those words, he yelled for everyone to go back to the general, and absolutely everyone around him, like zombies, responded obey. Changson began to absorb them all into himself, and Tayson asked in surprise what was going on. To this, the clown replied that the impossible was happening and it looked like it was really going to end. The clown turned to the guy and said his name was Lee Gemina. Maybe they'll see each other again if the guy stays alive. And absolutely all the clones said goodbye to him. Tayson watched this with some bewilderment, not picking up where they were all going. Then Chang's son appeared in front of him in his natural form and said that they fought well, of course, but he didn't have time for that. He has too little time. Wariahan must not get this power. At Wariahan's house, Nuna covered her boyfriend with the lid of the coffin with the words that she would cover him with a blanket since their home was destroyed, so for now it would be better for them to stay here. Though of course the fight was impressive, grinned the girl. Finished with her business, she took off her robe, which was alive and wanted food. It was through her that the girl sensed the general's soul and realized that she had a bad feeling and needed to hurry. Pulling back her robe and Kongchul's part-time assistant, Nuna ordered her to move forward. She was in a big hurry to help Tayson. University. The general said that a god is due to be born soon and he would like to see it, but alas. Tayson replied that he was sorry, but he wished he were dead. Tayson thought in despair that it was over, for he had used up all his strength on that clown and he had no strength to fight the general. But no matter what, he threw himself into the attack, as he had no other choice. And he even succeeded in something, but he was quickly exhausted and sank to the floor helplessly. And the general stood there as if nothing had happened and he had all three faces on him. Tayson realized he couldn't take this fight. Besides, his arm seemed to be broken. He thought it would be a simple task to stay alive, but that was not the case. Meanwhile, the general and his trio of great chiefs grinned, and the general said that he wanted to wait until noon and absorb all the divine power. He had everything thought out in advance, but it seems Tayson was lucky, because Wariahan was already here. So even if his power is small now, should absorb him. If he surrenders quietly, the general agrees to let him go without any pain. Tayson shouted that the man really thought he was going to fight him. He'd better run away. And the boy did run away. The general laughed and said that he was ready to play around, and the lad was just as fit. The general then shouted Chanson's call and began to lift Tayson in the air. Along with this he delivered a portrait blow. Tayson realized with horror that he had stopped feeling his body. The general explained to him that the portrait strike was a kind of curse that made the person being attacked stop feeling his flesh. He then told the guy that he wouldn't let the main light in him get stronger. Besides, he can't run away from it. His ability is to absorb the power of the living in the human soul. He showed Tayson his hand and explained that he held the soul of his companion, the general's wife. He was now one with her soul. Then the general assumed his true form, that of a commander-in-chief, a huge, pumped-up man. However, tears rolled down his eyes as he felt his wife's pain and sadness. The general felt a powerful connection and said he would make sure their dreams came true. Tayson yelled that the general was still a piece of shit and maybe that was enough. He didn't really want to listen to him whine, so he'd better stop. Then the general summoned the power of the three brothers and said it was time to begin. Tayson realized he couldn't move and knew he had to accept it. The general's attack with the power of the three brothers began to work on him. During that powerful attack, it seemed to Tayson, for the umpteenth time that day, that it was over. Why had he been transported back to his past, to when he was in middle school? At that time he became a patrolman. He became a patrolman because he was sick of the endless teasing from the high school kids, who were always intent on chasing him down and beating him up. It pissed him off, so he wanted them to get their punishment fairly. And besides that, of course, he was also very fond of money. Apart from that, the guy was also very annoyed by weakling, and all because the son of the deputy constantly threw hurtful words, without thinking about the consequence. So Tayson never missed a chance to humiliate him, even though he began to apologize for everything. When Tayson's mother ran away while he was still in elementary school, the deputy's son and his friends ridiculed him literally at every turn. They called him ugly and mocked his situation in every possible way, which of course made the boy very angry. Because of the constant ridicule, he could not forget that his mother had done such a deed and left him. Tayson began to build up hatred inside, although outside he could only stand idly by and cry. But at one point, he was able to fight back by striking his attacker, as he realized that he had a choice to make, fight back or be humiliated forever. for the very first time in his life. When he dared to fight back, he also heard words of remorse and apology from his assailant. These words had even brought him a kind of satisfaction, and he could not help noting that this feeling was quite pleasant. University. So now, lying defeated by Chonsuen's attack, Taesun thought it was better to be beaten than to be beaten. He felt that he had no strength left. He didn't understand why it was happening, and he was getting annoyed. Chon-sun looked at Taesun contemptuously and said that it looked like the demon inside him was eating his body. He then said that he had had enough of this and that it was time to finish him off. He was sad that he didn't respond to his fists, but that was probably his fate and karma. Taesun realized that it looked like the general was right. It was karma to him for the violence that had ruled him and that had been his way of surviving all his teenage years. He felt resentful, because he just wanted to live a good life, even though he knew that someday this life would end. The guy realized that he was really very tired of being tormented by everything in this life, and he just wanted to end it all already, so he decided that it was better to just give up and go with the flow. Before he could even think about it, he saw his middle school self in front of him. Taesun thought he was hallucinating. Meanwhile, his copy was asking why he was giving up. He was fighting for 1 billion won. He should get up and keep fighting. But Taesun yelled at him to shut up. He couldn't beat the general. His future was stronger than him. But his copy didn't hold back and kept saying that even when he was abandoned by his mother, he was able to survive. Where did the strong and confident Kim Taesung go now? The boy sadly replied with his head down that he was never strong. He just pretended to be. Because he didn't want to be looked down upon and bullied, so he just pretended to protect himself from people. Taesun remembered that day when he had gotten satisfaction from his assailant's attack. He had actually felt sad. He had only pretended to be strong, but it was actually a frightening feeling. Up until today, he had been pretending all this time. And if he had money, a good family, he wouldn't have become what he was now. He wouldn't have had to pretend to be strong to live a good life, and he wouldn't have started fighting to survive. Also, his mom, she wouldn't have left him. Taesun often thought that if he hadn't been born at all, your mom would have been happier. So he decided now that it had to end, because if he died, Taesun's copy tapped him on the forehead with his fist, bringing him to his senses and telling him to stop whining. It was too soon for him to give up, and he shouldn't bury himself so quickly. Taesun asked why he kept making these stupid speeches, since they were one and the same and he was already doomed to die anyway. But his copy sternly ordered to listen to him carefully and pronounced that he will not force him to live on. The choice is his anyway. But also Taesun should know that he is not his copy. He just borrowed his body. Taesun realized that this was the main lantern and was suddenly transported to his childhood home. He saw himself as a little boy, sleeping in his bed, and his mother sitting next to him, crying. Kopia explains to Taesun that this is what his mother looked like before she disappeared. He hadn't seen it then, but it was true. Taesun saw his mom ask his sleeping mom to forgive him and handed him the glow of the lantern, saying it was all she could give him. But since it wasn't safe for him to be around her, she would have to leave, so she asked him to stay strong and disappeared. Taesun's copy said that his life would have been in danger if his mother had stayed by his side, so she left to save him, and lastly, she just wanted to protect him with a basic flashlight. Kopia said that he had shown him the truth. Now it was past time to make a choice, surrender or keep fighting. But it was up to him to decide. Taesun realized that the main flashlight was in him thanks to his mother. So now that he suddenly knew the whole truth, things would be different. Suddenly the copy disappeared and Taesun saw his mother in front of him. He thought she was a ghost at first, but his mother dispelled his doubts by saying that it was the future that the main lantern was showing her. His mother proudly said that her son had grown a lot and asked if he was okay. Taesun was surprised at such a question and grudgingly began to shout that she had been gone so long, she couldn't even imagine how hard it was for him. Before he could finish his speech, he realized he was disappearing. His mom explained to him that he was coming back. She also said that she was very happy to see him. He had grown a lot and it was very sad. Taesun cried and said he hadn't told him everything yet. His mother told him that if they were meant to see each other, they would see each other again, and asked him not to cry, but to let go of the past. Taesun shouted that he should definitely survive and live a better life than her mom. His mother supported him and said that they would see each other again. Taesun regained his senses and attacked the general with redoubled vigor. Chon-sun was surprised at this turn of events, as the boy had just been literally dying, so how could he have so much strength? He wondered. Taesun remembered that before his mother had left, he had woken up and asked her why she was awake. His mother replied that nothing was wrong, she had just seen a spirit. He realized that she had then seen the birth of God. Taesung found true inspiration in his mother's words, which were deeply meaningful. If fate had destined them to meet, he had a duty to act without despair. This truth influenced him to give up crying, and he chose the path of actively ending his life. The general, watching Taesun, saw how willpower made him stronger. The fire of determination burned in his eyes, and the general realized that this possessed spirit was their powerful ally. Taesun's copy shared a thought. If he chose battle, he must destroy everything in front of him, just as he had swung his fists that day. He must fight desperately for his life and his destiny. That moment awakened Taesun's incredible strength, and his blow to the general's stomach was so powerful that it seemed to shake the ground. The general said that it was amazing. Even if Taesung was a complete mediocrity and a vessel of God, he couldn't believe that he had reached the level of complete obsession in a crisis situation. However, the general was fine with that. He said that it was even a good thing. Taesun replied that the general would die by his hand anyway, as this rapidly awakened power intoxicates him. Chon-sun replied that he would awaken the god anyway, but Taesun interrupted him, ordering him to be quiet as he was interfering with his thinking about what to do with the 100 million he would get for him. The general laughed and said he was very insolent and cocky, and the spirit of the great pillar yelled how dare he open his mouth at all. Then the general used several attacks at once: death of the funeral portrait, the song of spraying gunpowder, and killing by the east wind. The general laughed and asked how he felt about dying from 500 kinds of plague. He promised Taesun that he would roar with pain that would burn everything down to his soul. And Taesun in turn used attacks such as Tokibi Fire and Red Lotus. The general turned to Taesun with a question full of bewilderment, genuinely wondering why the kind of violence he had used against him was so unacceptable. Taesun, only shrugging his shoulders, calmly responded that there was no point in worrying about the past, for he intended to get his retribution back. Following this, he resorted to a Tokibi fist strike without the slightest hesitation, as if expressing his intention emphatically and harshly. At the conclusion of this attack, Taesun added that not only was the Tokibi fist was employed by him, but his hand, capable of instantly crushing heads, was in full use. The general, in anger and despair, let out an exhausted scream, giving out his wife's name, Imja, as if in a last desperate attempt to return to reality. It was as if that scream had opened a door to his past, and an image of the moment when he first saw his future wife came into his mind's eye. The minute she so beautiful turned to him, he vowed to throw everything at her feet, so priceless was her smile. The general realized that he would soon be able to see her smile again and he would be by her side forever. But back in the present, the general and his 3 aides yelled that it couldn't end that easily. If this was the end, he would burn down the house to get rid of Taesun as well. The general began to summon the god Paldu Chonsun, who would appear here and now, crossing the world of the living and the world of the dead. Before he died, he had time to summon the spirit of the great topmost pillar. It was the last of his last spirits that he had summoned after giving his life. Chonsun asked Taesun if he would like to keep him company in the next world. Taesun asked him why he would do that, because he would destroy the whole school, its household damage. He stated that he would set him straight and called on the hand of the Tokibi and the killing spirit of God Bolsel again. Under the onslaught of time, Nuna finally reached Taesun. As she looked around, she instantly realized that the energy flow enveloping the place was a manifestation of the spirit of the spinning pillar. She sensed an invisible threat, but dismissed it, whispering to Taesun to hold on a little longer. Meanwhile, she looked around and felt that she seemed to be too late. In her mind, she blamed her robe for this, for Kong Chong seemed to have delayed carrying her here for too long. On the ground lay the defeated General Chong-sun, and his astonishment could be seen in his eyes. He couldn't believe that Taesung had managed to get rid of the power of the spirit of the spinning pillar. At that moment, a realization pierced through him. All of this was made possible by God's intervention. At this time Taesun felt the burning pain again, like a flame in his veins. With difficulty, the general's faint words escaped his lips as he warned Taesun not to think that all was finished. His fate was already entwined with dark threads, and the road ahead would not be smooth. Taesun looked at the general with some contempt. "You seem to have forgotten your true nature," he pronounced condescendingly. "You were born to devour sand, subject to the whims of the wind." A confident smile played on Taesun's lips. He realized that, though he did not yet fully understand what had happened, he had won. The battle was over and he had won. Nuna called him, calling him chicken, and he was quite pleased with her. And Nuna said that it was a difficult battle, but he stood up to it. He was good. Taesun replied that it was nothing, and the shamaness asked laughingly if his feet were getting stiff, to which the lad only laughed. Then Nuna became serious and said that judging from his appearance, he had reached the level of a godman and should probably say hello to him officially. With those words, she said that he was the king of all spirits. He had descended to this earth on the foretold day to appease the entire universe. And she is truly happy to welcome him. The shamaness also began to say that she would do her best to. But Tae-sun interrupted her, asking her what she was carrying and demanded that she give him the money. Nuna replied that of course she would give him the money and handed him a suitcase full of bills. Tae-sung rejoiced like crazy because he had received 100 million won. But Nuna didn't really share his joy and said that even though he's so drooling to get his hands on 100 million at the age of 18, it's too early to relax. After playing with the bills, Tae-sun finally turned his attention to her and asked what she meant. Nuna replied that she understood his joy, but it was still early. There would be those who would try to catch him in the future. So we must make a plan of action now. Tae-sun asked with a sneer what kind of plan of action. Let them go, he will defeat them all. Nuna laughed and said that of course with such strength anyone could be defeated, so she had a new plan. But looking at the guy, she realized that he didn't listen to her at all, continuing to be happy with money. And it was really so, which later played a fatal mistake with him. Before Tae-sun could remember, Nuna had plunged her sword right into his heart. Grinning wickedly, she pronounced that she had warned him not to like money too much, hadn't she? That's the end of it. Unfortunately, that's all the chapters that are available. If there are new chapters, I'll be sure to make a video about them. In the meantime guys, if you like this video and you want new videos, let's get 1000 likes for this video. Also subscribe to the channel, click on the bell and leave a comment. Also in the comments you can write your manga preferences so I can make a video about them. Until the next video.